The publication, ladies and gentlemen, also referred to planning and programming, like that employed by the notorious PPBS outlined in the fall 1995 relevance special report called New World Orders, the One World Movement versus United States Sovereignty, an issue that I've expounded upon for many hours on this broadcast. And like the hour of the time, Phil O'Halloran documents and sources what he says. It also referred to International Standards Organization 9000, or ISO 9000, which is a Geneva-based United Nations offshoot. The ISO series, which sets international standards for manufacturing, will become more and more important as education is internationalized. Now, folks, I hope you keep in mind at this point that the philosophy behind STW is that society must be managed, usually by a self-appointed elite. Not only have businesses like grocery store chains begun to adopt TQM, but so have school systems, which are also including it as part of their STW programs. STW is School to Work, in case you forgot. In this regard, Richmond Times Dispatch opinion page editor Robert Holland wrote of Tim Clem, a former Xerox executive for 10 years and a certified TQM trainer, in a July 9, 1997 column entitled TQM and STW Combine as the Twin Thieves of Individualism. Holland wrote this, quote, "Now, Clem speaks out strongly against TQM's use as an instrument to alter American society radically. Few Americans, says Clem, have a clue that the Federal School to Work Opportunities Act, a system currently being installed in all 50 states, extends TQM thinking into the schooling of America's children. To institute the TQM process, corporate trainers must bring about a total cultural change, wherein all employees shed their individualism for a unified set of corporate values. If corporations could hire new employees already steeped in TQM, they could save millions of dollars in training costs. That's where School to Work, a system avidly supported by many multinational corporations, comes in. As Clem noted, the STWOA is the School to Work Opportunities Act, in case you forgot that too, explicitly calls for all students, all of them, to be steeped in TQM techniques of group problem solving and associated attitudes. In other words, socialist or Marxist collectivism. The STWOA, that was an end quote, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. The STWOA also calls for all students to be assessed according to such affective skills as self-esteem, working in a group, and appreciating diversity. As with TQM, Clem notes STW reduces all jobs to a task level. The feds are rating the level of skill that will be necessary for performing each task, and STW is to match up students with those skills needed in the area workforce. The assessments of a student's personal qualities and TQM competencies go to prospective employers. That's the way TQM and STW have been wired to work together. It would be very hard to imagine any piece of social engineering more destructive of individual initiative, inventiveness, and enterprise. In short, the destruction of the American dream. The undermining, ladies and gentlemen, of American individualism and independence has actually been underway for quite some time, a long time, as a matter of fact. Many educators today call themselves progressive and think highly of the father of progressive education, John Dewey. But those of us in the know that John Dewey is the man responsible for the stupidity of half of the nation's youth. Graduating children from high school that can't even read. Promoting students to the next higher grade level up. when they can't pass the grade level that they're in, for fear that their self-esteem might be damaged. Not only was John Dewey a leader in the intercollegiate socialist society elite, but he also wrote in Democracy and Education in 1916 that, quote, dependence denotes a power rather than a weakness. There is always a danger that increased personal independence will decrease the social capacity of an individual. In making himself reliant, it often makes an individual develop an illusion of being really able to stand and act alone, an unnamed form of insanity which is responsible for a large part of the remedial suffering of the world, end quote. According to Dewey, then, if you're dependent, you're normal. But if you're independent and self-reliant, you're insane, and that is the basic premise of socialism. This attitude, espoused by the really insane John Dewey and his insane followers, has had a lot to do with the development of the welfare state dependency and victimology we are witnessing today. You see, everybody has to be a victim or socialism cannot triumph. And when you allow yourself to be a victim, you are promoting the victory of socialism and your own enslavement in the dependency upon the state big brother who will change your diapers, tell you when to go to bed, when to get up, provide your entertainment for you, make sure that you have a job, and force feed you whether you want to eat or not. They'll stick a tube down your throat and shovel it in. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, human beings are now thought of as human resources, or human capital, not people, or human beings. Miss America for 1996, Chantel Smith, presented SGW as her program for the pageant. And when visiting Michigan, she spoke about our investment in human capital. That's what School to Work is all about. In 1996, with funding from the United States Departments of Labor, Education, and Health and Human Services, the National Governors Association produced Building State Systems Based on Performance, the Workforce Development Experience, a Guide for States, which on page 46 refers to people as, quote, humanware, end quote, spelled Humanware. I quote, just 8 days after the President delivered his State of the Union address on February the 12th, which called for national education standards, Congressman Henry Hyde, along with federal and state legislators, held a conference on Capitol Hill to discuss the crises in American schools. Hyde stated, the profound changes in school curricula are happening under the guise of reform. The reason? The changes are designed to turn our nation's elementary and high schools into a coerced training ground for the labor market. These changes are designed to guarantee an ample supply of low-wage earners for jobs employers now have trouble filling, end quote, and will ensure that your child never has a chance to challenge the children of the elite on their own ground, never to become President of the United States, never to become a United States Senator, never to become a chief executive officer of any corporation in the world, never to found their own business and make it succeed and improve the status and standard of living of themselves and their family. Never, 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 never. And if you think otherwise, you are playing a fool's game. American students are constantly hearing school to work being promoted as a means of preparing them for all the high-tech jobs of the future. What crap. However, U.S. Senator Richard Bryan of Nevada, appearing on C-SPAN on April 4th, 1997, said, quote, there are 10% fewer employed in high-tech jobs than in 1990, end quote. Furthermore, in the monthly Labor Review, November 1995, published by the United States Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics, There is a table entitled, quote, Occupations with the Largest Job Growth, 1994 to 2005, Moderate Alternative Projection, end quote, which lists the top 4 largest job growth areas as follows. Listen to this carefully, ladies and gentlemen, because this is where your children will be going. Cashiers, janitors, and cleaners, including maids and housekeeping cleaners, salespersons, retail, waiters, and waitresses. And there's nothing wrong with these professions, ladies and gentlemen, if you choose or your children choose to go into that profession. There are some very honest, hardworking, and good people in this country who are in those professions, but they chose those professions. They weren't forced into those professions, like your children will be in the School to Work programs. They will be channeled into the professions where people are needed to be employed, and they can tell you whatever they want. That's the reality of the situation. If there are only 10,000 new job opportunities in high tech throughout the nation each year, that means only 10,000 students will go into those jobs, and the other millions of students will go into cashiers, janitors, and cleaners, including maids and housekeeping, cleaners, salespersons, retail, waiters, and waitresses. Check the Monthly Labor Review, June 1997, page 16 for yourself. Don't believe a word I'm saying, unless you can prove it in your own research. Listen to everyone, read everything. But unless you conduct your own research, you will never know the truth. You will never know who's telling you the truth. You will never know who's lying to you. You will never know when you're being manipulated and controlled. And most of you, for most of your life, are being lied to, manipulated, and controlled. Whether you believe it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, it's the truth. Currently, students have the most to say about what career paths they take. But as human capital, their paths increasingly will be directed by society via school to work, outcome-based educational programs, so that they, quote, demonstrate certain skills, end quote. A leading outcome-based education consultant today, Harvard University professor Howard Gardner, who was involved in the infamous MACOS, or MACOS project, wrote Frames of Mind, the theory of multiple intelligences. In it, he proposed that ultimately the educational plans that are pursued need to be orchestrated across various interest groups of the society so that they can, taken together, help the society to achieve its larger goals. That's called social engineering in simple terms that you can understand. He goes on to say, individual profiles must be considered in the light of goals pursued by the wider society, and sometimes, in fact, individuals with gifts in certain directions must nonetheless be guided along other, less favored paths, simply because the needs of the culture are particularly urgent in that realm at that time, end quote. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, even though one may have the desire and skills to choose one career, if society needs individuals in an other, less favored career, then the individual should be guided toward those other careers. This attitude has caused criticism of School to Work, as Margaret Terry Orr of the Institute on Education and the Economy at Columbia University's Teachers College remarked, quote, "Not everyone embraces School to Work. There is a deep fear we are going to track children into dead-end careers," end quote. I'm telling you right now, it's exactly what they're going to do.